r/nosleep. Hosted by you/bucking_fastard. How I spent my Saturday night. My name is Glenn, and I'm a killer. You wouldn't know it to look at me. I'm what you might describe as painfully average. I look average, dress average, during the week I work an average mundane job. Almost every aspect of my life is ordinary and boring. Except for the weekends. On weekends I hunt. My preferred hunting ground are the pubs and clubs in the city. My quarry seems inexorably drawn to these places, ideal for them to hunt their own kind of prey. Sometimes I identify a target during the week. These times I'll stalk them, just a little bit. Mostly just to find out where they live. If they live alone it can often be easier to trail them there and catch them off guard for the kill. Last night was no different to a usual Saturday for me. At around 6 p.m. I had a big meal, need my energy for the hunt. Plus it help absorb the booze, it's best to have a few drinks when hunting in a pub/club as it helps with the blending in. I then showered and dressed. Smart but plain, nothing gaudy. Don't want to be unkempt, that can draw as much attention as dressing extravagantly. Yesterday I went with a nice gray suit, black shirt and shoes. Nice quality but plain. Then it's time to check my kill kit, we'll go more into that later. Once I was satisfied I had everything I need, I carefully stashed the gear into a special pocket I've added to the inside of my jacket and headed into town at around 7:30. I like to walk rather than get a bus or taxi. It gives me time to mentally prepare myself for the night's activities. Plus it gives me a chance to scope out more potential prey. This week I already knew who I'd be hunting. I initially spotted her a couple of weeks ago in one of my usual haunts. Followed her on and off over the next few weeks to get a feel for her routines. She's perfect, sticks to a routine and very rarely deviates. Every Saturday she goes to the same pub, meets the same group of women, stays till 12:30 then leaves with a different man. I reach the pub at around 8:30. Get in there and give a quick visual check. She was already in the center of the dance floor and she'd drawn a crowd. I notice she wears an eye-catching sequin dress, clearly designed to show as much flesh as possible. I suppose to look at you'd probably consider her stunningly beautiful. She certainly ticked off most of the boxes for conventional beauty standards. Personally, she repulsed me. Unlike the gaggle of slack-jawed reprobates orbiting her, I knew precisely what she was. Filth, a parasite, pollution in human form. Watching her admirers drooling over her gyrations caused me to vomit slightly into my mouth. I had to swallow it down before I made my way to the bar and ordered a beer. I'll drink a couple over the course of the night but not enough so that I'll be impaired. Drink in hand I melt into the background. The odd drunk sparks up a conversation over the course of the night and I respond politely but with little interest. I play the part of a guy who's down on his luck, looking to drown his sorrows in peace. Around 10 p.m. and more of her kind arrived. The horny swarm certainly seemed happy. I'd be lying if I said it didn't please me as well. This pub is a goldmine for finding my prey. My target had chosen her own prey by this point. I'd watched them retreat to a booth where he commenced plying her with booze. I figured they'd be there for a while so I took the opportunity to go for a piss and then ducked out for a smoke. I just got outside and lit up a fag when he came outside and asked for a light. The guy with my prey. He's what you internet folk would call a Chad. He was pretty big, clearly quite well built and incredibly full of himself. Probably one of those football casual fuckwits judging by the nose that had been obviously broken a couple of times and the scarred knuckles. He was also halfway shit-faced. This was going to be a pain in the fucking arse. Guys like this aren't easy to shrug off, especially when they're pissed. They just love to boast and I have very little patience for it. Still, I politely obliged him with a light and resigned myself to listening to a few minutes of his bullshit patter. You see that bird I'm dancing with, mate? Sure did, pal. Bet you wish you could get a piece of that arse, eh? I had to fight down the urge to puke. I was already done with this conversation and half tempted to just go home and leave the twat to get what's coming to him. Not really my type, mate. What? Are you a fucking poof or something, mate? Oh Jesus, not just an asshole but the type of asshole who gets aggressive the instant someone doesn't agree with him. I really didn't need to be getting into a fight. That's guaranteed to draw attention that I really didn't need that this close to kill time. Nah mate, I prefer chubby birds, he laughed, and I gave a relieved sigh internally. I finished my cig and chuck it into the gutter before heading inside. I had to avoid him the rest of the night. If he'd pointed me out to the parasites it could have fucked up the whole night. This kill took me 3 weeks of preparation and no steaming drunk dipshit was going to fuck that up. The rest of the night went without a hitch. I drank another beer while being mostly invisible to everyone there. Right on cue at 12:15 the barman called last orders. As the prey and her beau were collecting their jackets I slipped out into the street and found a nice dark corner from which to begin stalking. A couple of minutes later I saw them stagger into the street. Her sparkly dress made following them easy. I was able to keep a nice distance between us. Along the way I decided to have another smoke, but when I went for my lighter I couldn't find it. That meathead fuck must have pocketed it when I lent it to him, and I was in too much of a rush to get away to notice. No matter, I would get it back soon anyway. I tailed them for around 5 minutes before they turned off the main road and headed towards an industrial estate. My disgust at their lack of decency was pushed out by happiness that they were heading somewhere quiet and isolated. Doubly so because I was quite familiar with this particular industrial estate, having hunted there before. I was almost thinking the night's kill would be easier than I'd first thought. The estate was dark, many of the street lights weren't working, and normally it would be quite hard to track them while also keeping enough distance to avoid detection. I should really thank the prey for her choice of dress before I finished her. She just kept making it easy for me. It wasn't long before they ducked into what I knew was a long, dead-end alley. This is the part of the hunt where the urge to get it done is the strongest, but that's a mistake. It's best to give them a few minutes to get down to business. If went barreling in there immediately they'd hear me coming. Better to let them get thoroughly distracted. This also gave me a few precious minutes to get the kill kit ready. This is something or a ritual for me. First I pop in some gum. Chewing helps me focus. Next I made sure I divided some of my secondary weapons into my pockets. In the off chance I get disarmed, it's handy to have quick and easy access to less unwieldy weapons. As I pull out my primary weapon I reflected for a moment. How many of her kind, how many disgusting parasites have I ended with this? No time to do the math. It was killing time. The alley was dark but not pitch black. There was a small light at the far end that was just bright enough for me to make out their silhouettes writhing together. I could tell from the faint glittering of the sequin dress that the prey was facing away from me. I should be able to get her in the back before she even knew I was there. I slipped into the alley and moved forward. My heart was thumping in my ears. The anticipation of a nice clean kill gets the adrenaline flowing like you wouldn't believe. I advanced slowly at first, quickening my pace as I got closer. When I was within about 15 feet I broke into a sprint, hoping to add my momentum to the first strike. As I swung the stake towards her back she lashed out with a high-heeled foot that caught me clean in the chest. The kick launched me into the wall and also knocked the wind clean out of me. Her heel had broken one of my ribs, which was actually pretty lucky since had it missed my rib it would have plunged clean into my chest. Fucking hell, she was strong. As I crashed onto my knees I got quick a look at the guy. If he hadn't been so much of a lighter thieving cunt I'd have cared more that she'd already torn his head most of the way off. It hung pathetically from the stump of his neck, attached only by some skin and a few intact tendons. A shite fate, but not the worst I'd seen, at least it would have been quick. I then got a good look at my opponent. She dropped the glamour. The fake beauty stripped away to reveal the abomination she truly was. Her pallid skin seemed too tight, it stretched hideously over her misshapen skull. What had before been a head of luscious blonde hair was now a few lanky strands that hung around a face that inspired 1,000 nightmares. Skinny limbs with graying skin hanging off them ended in claws like butcher's knives. She could fillet you with those claws, it'd be easy. As I was trying desperately to catch my breath she casually tore her victim's head the rest of the way off and allowed the remaining blood to trickle into her gaping maw. Nice intimidation technique. It normally wouldn't work, but it, coupled with my own stupidity, was beginning to make me shite myself. Dumb fuck, Glenn strikes again. Didn't research thoroughly enough, got so excited for the kill I didn't look at the signs I was being shown all night. The way she entranced so many prey. The way her friends let her get first pick of the cattle when they arrived. The effectiveness of her glamour, so vile a creature could make herself look like a legit 10. This bitch wasn't just a vampire, she's the fucking brood mother. The oldest and strongest of her clan. No doubt she'd fought and killed hunters before. This kind of job should have taken a team. I should have had a priest, imam and a rabbi. I should have the fucking SAS and the Navy SEALs backing me up. But no, I was alone in a dark alley with a fucking brood mother and no one had a fucking clue. Brilliant, Glenn, fucking brilliant. I managed to catch my breath and ignore the pain in my chest long enough to make another lunge with the stake. She dodged it easily and backhanded me into the wall again, breaking a few more ribs. She'd already had more than enough time to kill me. She wanted to play with her food. This was both a horrifying and relieving realization. My impending death was going to take quite some time. Trust me on this, you absolutely do not ever want to be on the receiving end of a vampire brood mother torture session. On the other hand, I had a bit of time to try some other things. Are we going to play hunter? I know lots of fun games, it hissed, licking its lips with a tongue that'd be too long for a horse. Its hunger was satisfied and now it wanted to have fun with me. Jesus Christ almighty, I had to do something or this was going to be like Glasgow all over again. Get fucked. I managed to wheeze before a punch that felt like a bullet hit me in the gut. I fell face first into the floor. It was wet, with water, piss, that guy's blood, all of the above. No time to worry about that. I had just enough wherewithal to slip my hand into my pocket and felt for a new weapon. My vial of holy water hadn't broken. What a miracle. She grabbed the back of my head and pulled me effortlessly off of the ground. Now fully in her true form, she was a good foot taller than me and dangled me a few inches off the floor and began to squeeze. Have you ever had your head squeezed to the point where it felt like it was going to burst? There are very, very few things more unpleasant. Add an extremely long claws digging slowly into your skull and you have all the ingredients for a really shit Saturday night. I lashed out, punching ineffectually at her face. She laughed and broke my nose with a flick of her middle finger. My vision exploded with stars and began to darken at the edges. Again I was forced to admit how much of a dumbass I'd been. Vampires are strong, I've fought enough of them to know that firsthand, but this was ridiculous. She could have torn my head off with a twist of her wrist. This, I reminded myself, is why even the best hunters take on brood mothers in teams. Time to try something. I weakly wound up to throw a punch. She laughed again, confident I was now incapable of hurting her. And she would have been right if I'd thrown a punch, but I didn't. I spit directly into her eye. Normally this would just piss a hellish abomination off, but when you've been chewing garlic-infused gum, that shit will blind a vampire. Then I threw a nice meaty open hand slap, and thank God she didn't notice that I'd palmed the holy water till it was too late. The little glass vial shattered as my hand made contact with her face and the holy water immediately went to work. She dropped me and clutched her hideous face, recoiling in horror as the blessed fluid melted through her skin and began to dissolve her skull. It wasn't going to be enough to kill her, but it was going to hurt like fuck, and buy me enough time to hit her with something more substantial. As trump cards go, the knuckle dusters are very much underrated. Especially ones you get from the Vatican, that come tipped with silver crosses that are blessed by the Pope himself. Suffice to say they're not cheap or easy to get, but us hunters have our ways. I slip on the knuckle duster and with every ounce of strength I can muster and throw a vicious right hook. The punch connected with her bottom jaw and tore it clean off her head. The vampire let out a howl and doubled over, clutching at its devastated face. I staggered off while it clawed blindly at the floor trying to find its chin. My steak was lying just a few feet away and I snatched it up quickly. Time to finish the bitch. She was still searching madly when my final strike punched through her back and pierced her heart. The creature writhed spastically for a few seconds then fell still. I pulled a silver-edged knife from my kill kit and used it to take the brood mother's head off. I might have kicked it down the alley in celebration, I'm not 100% sure, because shortly after finishing the decapitation I passed out. I woke up a few hours later slumped against the alley wall with a torch being shown in my face. I heard the crackle of a radio and quickly realized that the police had found me. Shit. This could be a problem. Glenn? Thank fuck. Mo, get that torch out of my face. Glenn, did you finish the job? I gestured vaguely to the horrific scene in the alley. You tell me, you daft cunt. See any nightmare creatures still alive around here? You need to go to a hospital. Fuck that. Take me to St. Anthony's. Father Billy can patch me up. I could take you to the mosque. The imam is very grateful for the work you do. I'm sure he is, Mo, and the imam is a lovely bloke, but I just got beaten half to death by a fucking vampire. I don't like the Catholics any more than you do, but Father Billy is an old combat medic and I need medical attention more than prayers. I staggered over to Chad's corpse and went through his pockets. Mo looked mortified until I found my lighter and brandished it proudly like some kind of incredibly lame trophy. Mo sighed before helping me up and into the back of his police car. He's a good lad. Bit too into the religious side of things for my taste, but I can't really blame him. He's been the cleanup copper on a fair few of my kills. He dropped me at St. Anthony's and I promised him I'd nip into the station in a few days to do the paperwork. And yes, I'd go round and see the imam later in the week. He's always good for information on potential targets anyway. So that was my Saturday night. I'm chilling at Father Billy's with a nice big whiskey. I'll probably go home in a couple of days once I've healed up a bit. My wife will be worried, but knows how these things go, and I don't want me kids to see me all beaten up like this. They're still a bit too young to be learning what their dad really does for a living. My name is Glenn Livet. And I kill monsters.